The Neil Diamond Musical, A Beautiful Noise, the uplifting true story, featuring all the songs you love from his Grammy Award-winning career. October 21st through 26th at Des Moines Civic Center. On sale at dmpa.org.
What is up? Welcome to episode 2 of the Beat Reporters. I am Jake Brend with Cyclone Fanatic and Iowa Everywhere, joined by Rob Gray with Cyclone Fanatic in the Cedar Rapids Gazette, and also joined by Ben Hutchens with the Quad City Times. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Doing okay.
That's Sweet Caroline. It's been ringing in our ears. We've heard it twice now. In Ireland, last week in South Dakota. They're playing it. They're getting their Neil Diamond worth.
Well, I'm a Red Sox fan too, and so it's in the back of my mind as the Red Sox are really closing the regular season strong as well. And I don't know if they were the originals to adopt Sweet Caroline, but they were up near the top. So nothing but Sweet Caroline all around.
It's definitely a good time to be advertising that show at the Iowa events, or at the Iowa Civic Center, because like Ben said, Sweet Caroline has been in people's head for the last 2 weeks now. I mean, I had the video of Caleb Bacon walking around the field, and I've watched that video a few times. It's just been nothing but Sweet Caroline. And I'm sure, I wonder if our friend Jeff Kelderman is much of a Sweet Caroline guy. I picture probably a little more Metallica going on over at the Kelderman tailgate. Kelderman Manufacturing brings us the Beat Reporters, and Kelderman, he's your man's man. All of your manufacturing needs. I stopped by his tailgate on Saturday. He was taking a friend of the program, Keith Murphy, and his wife, Jenny, across the tailgating lots on a motorcycle. Just know that that's the type of business and that's the type of workmanship that you're going to be getting with Kelderman. If you need work done on your truck, your grill, Kelderman's your spot. If you need signage, just hit up Kelderman. You can find him. Just Google Kelderman Manufacturing, and it'll take you to the right place. We appreciate their sponsorship here of the Beat Reporters. We got a good show in store for you today. That's not right. This is what we're looking for. Rocco's a psychopath. We'll explain how Iowa State is finding flaws in their wins. Where's the pass rush? Iowa State's tight ends against the Iowa linebackers in the drought that goes back to 2011. We'll have all of that right here on the Beat Reporters. And let's start with the Rocco is a psychopath. I'll just go ahead and play the sound. This came from Tuesday's press conference when Taylor Mauser was asked what makes Rocco so good in the clutch.
Rocco I think he's a psychopath more than people think. Like, even you watch the start of the K-State game, some of the stuff that was there, like, that guy's better when all the air sucked out of the stadium. Everybody can barely see and stand up, and it's about to puke, and that guy's just nails. And even going into last week, like, we didn't take the shot to start the game because, like, it's cool or that's what we did before. It's like Rocco's better when we take a shot early and we put a lot on that guy's. The more we put on that guy's plate, the better he is. The easier we try to make it for him. For whatever reason, it's not, and he's better with his back against the wall. Like, the guy's just nuts. And I love him, and he's great, and I'd die for him. And he's so trusted, and you always feel like you have a chance with that guy. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's football, we talk about golf and all the other stuff we play all off season. Like, he wants to win everything in the worst way, and he's the ultimate competitor, and he's a guy that makes everyone around him better. He gives belief. He puts belief into everybody, into Campbell, into me, into his teammates.
Well, Taylor Mauser certainly delivered on Tuesday when it comes to sound bites. What went through your guys' mind? I know you were both sitting there in the room with me. What was going through your mind when Mauser was talking about Rocco?
Well, I guess I'll go first. I want to give a little bit of interesting perspective, because you think psychopath and you think a ruthless killer, a serial killer, an evil, certainly, person. And I think that's very much a misnomer. In fact, I did a little bit of research. So in 2022, an Oxford researcher named Kevin Dutton came out with a book, and it's titled, let me look at it again, The Wisdom of Psychopaths, What Saints, Spies, and Serial Killers Can Teach Us About Success. All right, now, if that's not a hook to buy a book, I don't know what is. But what I think the book finds is that there's a single-mindedness and a focus and ability to be in the moment for a quote-unquote psychopath. Now, of course, many of them are very bad, but not all of them are. And he said it's akin to very much to what Buddhist monks are able to achieve through constant meditation and lifestyle. So when you think about Campbell living in the moment, all that stuff, I think Mauser's very much, I don't, for all I know, he knows about that book, but I think he's alluding to the fact that Rocco is able to thrive amid chaos and compartmentalize everything. And as he said that toward the end, he wants to face more things. He wants things to be more difficult because that's how you grow. And certainly it's good to have some psychopathic traits when that's the way you want to operate.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Rob. I mean, Rocco's one of those guys who is always saying the right thing. He's so unassuming. You know, he's been here for a while. He's Rocco Becht. Everybody feels like they know what they have with him. And yet Mauser kind of alluded to that side that we don't get to see unless you're on the sidelines in that huddle going out to go win a game in the fourth quarter. I think, you know, Rocco told us that he talks to those guys. What do you say to your team before you lead them out there for a fourth quarter drive? I think there's a level in a gear to Rocco Becht that us in the media and everybody in Jack Trice Stadium might never get to understand.
Yeah, and it's something that, like Mauser said it right there, you see it in practice, you see it in the huddle, you see it on the golf course. Who else, like, who knows? Maybe you see it on Xbox. There are just some guys that just have that gene. And it certainly helps when your dad is one of the better tight ends to ever play the sport of football. And I'm sure that he was raised in a very competitive way, but he's also raised in, I think, a very humble way too. And I think that's the secret sauce to a good quarterback. It's having that killer instinct, but you've also got to be a leader of men, and you've got to be able to take the fall when it doesn't go right. And I think that's what makes Rocco just, I don't want to call him a near perfect quarterback. That's not fair to put on any college football player, but it makes him a near perfect quarterback for this program, I think, when it comes to having the ball in his hands when they need him most.
He was 95% perfect on Saturday. You were close.
And Mauser blamed himself for the quote-unquote bad route that he had drawn up for, I think, yet another tight end, Keaton Ruska. But I wanted to say, I think for Rocco, we all know the story that Campbell has told about how when did he learn Rocco Becht was going to be a QB1 he can depend on? When he was puking his guts out during the Ohio game, and he figures, okay, well, we better get J.J. Cole ready. And Rocco comes and says, I'm playing. No ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, that speaks to a competitive drive. And it doesn't matter. He still lost the game, right? It's still one of those losses that caused much of an uproar in Iowa State's fan base as I've seen in recent years. I mean, for good reasons. But then look how the team responded to it that season. And I think what Rocco did in a relatively short period of time is built a lot of trust. And that's not easy to do as a young quarterback, as a young player, period. But he had to do it. He looked and modeled at people who had done it before and put his own twist on it. And I think immediately he had that trust, and they just rolled on from there. But definitely unique, as you said, Jake, very well suited to this program, like Brock Purdy was. Obviously, there are a lot of comps with him and Brock, and I think that's appropriate. Differences too, but a lot of comps.
Yeah, and you mentioned that day against Ohio, and it's so easy. What I try to do almost every single day in this profession is put myself in these players' shoes. They're going to go home, and it was certain yesterday that one of the players at practice is probably having troubles with a girlfriend, or there's probably someone who's in a really hard class that they can't get over. Put yourself in Rocco's shoes in 2023, puking your guts out at halftime. I remember the 2024 women's basketball Final Four. I got food poisoning in Cleveland. I missed the national championship. I could not move. It was miserable. To put myself in those shoes to go out and play a football game, to have the risk of getting smoked at any second by a defensive end or a linebacker, you can see how that would rally the troops, how that would get not only the staff to buy in to Rocco, but to get your teammates. Because if you're one of the other players, like, oh, I know how bad that feels. I can't believe he's going out there right now, and it speaks to Rocco as a player and as a person.
Agreed.
Well, so we kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but Rocco went 19 of 20, and here he is post-game still saying, well, I could have been 20 of 20, or I could have been perfect. And you saw it there, Taylor Mauser blamed himself for the wrong route by the tight end. I was just blown away when I left that game how Rocco, how Campbell, how a few other players were saying, yeah, it was good, but there's still stuff we can do better. And I think there's times where you can see through that coach speak and say, like, oh, yeah, they're just saying it to say it. But I don't know about you guys. I felt like that was real when they were talking about it after a 48-point win. For sure. And, that first drive, South Dakota goes right down the field. They did it again on the second drive until Jamison Patton came up with an interception that we all thought maybe kind of flipped that game on its head and made South Dakota press a little bit. But yeah, in a 55-7 game, you can still find things that you need to improve on.
Yeah, I think that's every coach is going to insist that, hey, we could have done things better, right? Because the last thing you ever want your team to be is feeling too good about itself. Mm-hmm. Who was it? Bryant McFadden had the praise is poison speech he gave to his former team after that game. And I thought that was really good. And I think sometimes that can be taken to an extreme, and people are like, can get too caught up in, hey, I'm looking for a chip on my shoulder, this and this and that. But if you balance it with, hey, I feel good about what I did, but I know I've got to be better, versus, oh no, who's disrespecting me? I think it's very healthy, and I think it's become a hallmark of Campbell's program, many programs, but certainly a key to his success here in now season 10. It is like you say, it's not just them just saying that. Rocco will always say, yeah, well, I should have hit that pass, or you even go back to the Kansas State game. Of course, he worked hard to get it back up to 50%, but 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, with the rushing touchdown included. Very efficient, but he picked apart every single thing he did, and I think that's a trait of a winner. Psychopath or not.
It's hard for me to be in that room on Saturday and say, like, Rocco, you can't be serious right now, man. Just went 19 of 20. Maybe you could say he underthrew Eskelson a little bit. If I'm supposed to be put in the shoes of it's why I could never be a film critic, because I watched The Godfather. I'm like, how could anyone say anything negative about this movie? But when you are a coach, or when you are, I'm blanking on the quarterback that Rocco has as a mentor, one of Anthony's friends. Gosh, I should know who it is. Either way, when they're going back and watching his tape, you've got to find that of like, well, if you would have let Eskelson 3 more yards, that's a touchdown. He's not getting tripped up. That could be the difference between winning a Big 12 championship and not, or the missed throw again to Keaton Roskup. And that, I think that's just a fascinating part that us journalists can't really completely comprehend, the level that it takes to be a Power 4 high level quarterback. Welcome back, Rob. We will
I don't know what happened there.
We'll get you back in the stream. No, you are perfectly fine. You didn't miss much, just me rambling. But the point I was making is that you can't comprehend the level of perfectionism that it takes to be a Power 4 quarterback.
Well, and Jake, the underlying aspect to all of this is against, a Big 12 opponent, maybe that short underthrow of Eskelson will matter. And maybe
exactly
some of these mistakes that we saw in the secondary against Kansas State maybe get covered up a little bit with the athletic difference against South Dakota. So, maybe there is a bit of a quest for perfection that appears to be perfection against a team from the FCS, but might be exposed during a team from the Big 12.
Yeah, and I think about it as a tennis player or in a golf perspective. I think a lot of people can relate to that. There's shots that you can hit on an easier golf course or a more wide open golf course that you can get away with. Like there's maybe a missed throw against South Dakota that you can get away with that maybe when you go up against TCU you aren't able to. And like if I hit a golf shot on a super wide open cow pasture type golf course, whatever, I can still see the green from the other fairway. If I do that at Briarwood and Ankeny, absolutely no way. And that's probably the way you have to look at it, of no matter how good us or how good we think that Rocco played or how good everybody's telling Rocco he played, he's probably in that room looking like, oh man, I can't believe I didn't lead Eskelsen, or I can't believe I missed that one throw. And that's why he's a Power 4 quarterback and we're sitting at home podcasting.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, this ties into what Campbell's talked about increasingly in recent years about these guys being pros. I don't even think it's Rocco being necessarily mad at himself. I think he realizes, the blueprint to success hinges on, okay, here's what happened. Let's look at the areas immediately that I could have been better. I think it's very methodical. But as you say, Jake, I mean, he takes ultimate accountability. I mean, he'll say flat out to us, that's all on me. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But I think that's part of the deal. And I think he had they didn't, when Brock Purdy came before you, that matters. When you had examples, on both sides of the ball, when you had, even just the way Xavier Hutchinson prepared, we saw how Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins prepared. Some of the guys on the defensive side, Bo Freeler, what he went through to play, and on and on and on you go. I mean, I think it's just, it coincides with the program getting better and consistently good. And of course, last year's program record-breaking 11-win season. And I mean, I suppose it ties into NIL a little bit too, because you are kind of a pro, but that's a different discussion. But I think it still applies. I think that they're very much measured. And I think that's what pros do. It's like, what's next? How do I attack it? What's good? What isn't? And, it's that cut and dry.
Well, and I know that in the room right now, if there's one thing that the staff is nitpicking and critiquing, I'm sure it's, hey, defensive line, linebackers, how do we get to the quarterback? Because through 2 games, Iowa State has just 1 sack, and I don't even think that it was, I'm pretty sure that they're counting the Avery Johnson intentional grounding as a sack. So Iowa State really hasn't put a quarterback on their back yet. And we'll see how much of that is, one, Avery Johnson is a super mobile quarterback. He's not going to take many sacks. How much of that is a pretty vanilla game plan against South Dakota, not necessarily trying, but I think it's definitely got to be a concern heading into week 2 that Iowa State still really hasn't pressured the quarterback a ton.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, last year they were one of the worst in FBS, and it's been a trend ever since Will McDonald left. Some of the other standouts, Wazirike, I think they've got some dudes. I think part of it is scheme. I think once they got that lead on South Dakota, you're like, well, let's just drop 8 and make Aiden Bowman be forced to find a guy in double coverage. And uncharacteristic for Aiden Bowman, he threw a couple of interceptions when I think he'd thrown 11 in almost 3 full seasons as a starter before that. So that's what Haycock would probably say. At the same time, you want to see some juice. You want to see somebody just win that one-on-one. And that's what they talked about all fall camp, off season. That's what we've got to do. I think we've seen Ike Ezeagu flash. I think we've seen Dom Orange flash in the middle. That's harder when there's 2 or 3 guys on you. I don't think we've seen it from Tom McDonough yet. I think we have seen it a little bit when they bring Caleb Bacon. He just hasn't gotten the quarterback. I think even last week he got close as an unblocked guy once. So I think we'll see that more as the competition level spikes. But it's a definitely it should be a huge concern, because you can say, okay, well, we gave up 21 points to 7 points and all that. But we also gave a significant amount of yardage. And you're going to face better offenses than you faced these first 2 weeks that are going to be able to convert. They're going to be able to put points on the board along with the yards. And if you can't disrupt that quarterback, again, while not being outstanding against the run, I think they've been solid, particularly from second half Kansas State on. And it gets a really good quarterback in Pierre for South Dakota, running back in Pierre with South Dakota. But a lot that line has to prove. And it does have to involve, as you said, Jake, the Zach Lovett's, the Caleb Bacons, putting their hand on the ground and providing that little extra something off the edge as well.
Jake, if Iowa State's, opening win against Kansas State is Godfather Part 1, and the 55-7 is the Godfather Part 2, here's my critique. I can find some holes in those flawless movies. And it is the pass rush. Rob, you alluded to it. Iowa State is not going to be an elite pass rushing team when you look at the statistics at the end of the year in terms of sacks. They play a 3-man front. Cyclone fans know this. John Haycock was super transparent about that when we asked him about it leading into the season. And the truth is Iowa State's okay with not generating a ton of sacks because, they're a top half defense in the Big 12 in terms of points, which I'd rather lead that category than I would in sacks. Here's the thing that caught my attention. We asked Haycock, there's still situational football where the Cyclones want to be able to rush the passer. There's still third downs where you'd like to see a team that normally plays a 3-man front get after the quarterback and generate some pressure. And against South Dakota, I was disappointed in what the Cyclones were able to do in that front. Now, there's 2 plays that Iowa State fans will remember that I kind of got into the film room and looked at. The first was a 3rd and 9 that South Dakota had on its first drive of the game. And the Cyclones, brought 5, which we know isn't a blitz, but it sure feels like it when you're normally running 3. And the running back leaked out of the backfield, got an angle route, and kind of ran away from Bo Goodwin on a big 3rd down conversion. Now, Bowman did hit his back. The Cyclones did knock him on his back. They got a pressure on that play, but not fast enough to generate a loss, and they got beat. And then in the next series, South Dakota again had the ball on, it was a 3rd and 11. And the Cyclones actually showed a 7-man pressure on this particular play. The 2 outside linebackers bailed, but the 5 men who rushed the passer weren't able to generate enough pressure. Bauman was able to loft a high pass down the right sideline for another big 3rd down conversion. So I look at those 2 plays as those are situations where you'd like to see Iowa State's 5 best pass rushers beat South Dakota's 5 best pass blockers. Guys like Von Troy Malone, you mentioned McDonough, Rob. Those are 2 guys on the edge that you'd like to see with a little bit more pressure, with a little bit more getting to the quarterback. That's where I think the critique with the Godfather and the Godfather Part 2 is.
That's really good insight, Ben. And when you do have Dom Orange in the middle, he's getting at least 2 guys each play, sometimes 3. And that should be opening up paths, whether it's for Ike Ezeagu, Tomato McDonough, Von Troy Malone, even Jace Gilbert has been getting some run. It should be opening up spaces for those guys on the edge to get pressure. And if not, then you're definitely opening up lanes for a linebacker to get through. And we'll see if that's able to come to fruition. And we've seen that a lot in the Haycock era, where they used to get to the quarterback constantly with a 3-down front. And it, for whatever reason, since Will McDonald, since Jaquan Bailey, I guess since they haven't had one of those guys, we just haven't really seen it at a consistent level at all.
Yeah, and I will say one last thing on this. Just like the offense generally doesn't want to show too much ahead of a big rivalry game, Haycock's defense never does either. And we've seen him be very creative with pressures throughout his long tenure, right alongside head coach Matt Campbell at Iowa State. And I think we'll see that as it continue to happen. But I think the greater concern is what Ben alluded to. And those 2 plays stood out to me as well. I remember watching them and being like, if you bring 5, you've got to get that quarterback down. I mean, and the 3rd and 11 was especially glaring because you have a wide open guy. I think it was a 30-yard gain ish. I mean, that's just teams have converted some third and longs against Iowa State. I know Kansas State was very successful early in that game in Dublin on third downs, and that's got to be something that comes down because that is a stat that usually is tied with how much pressure can you get on the quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. And there's also the aspect of how much can a lack of a pass rush affect what I think is a pretty good secondary, because a great secondary can only be so great for so long if the quarterback has as much time as he wants. So I think that's a balance, and I definitely think once we get past Arkansas State and there's a 4-game sample size, I think we'll probably have a more clear thought on it definitely after this week against Iowa. That's a big test against a really, really good O-line and a mobile quarterback. So we'll see if Iowa State is able to maybe capitalize on some of Gronowski's hiccups from week 1.
Yep, absolutely.
Next up, this is flipping to the other side of the ball. We're going to transition a little more into the Cyhawk game, previewing it from an X's and O's standpoint. And it's the Iowa State tight ends against the Iowa linebackers. And I don't know the last time in this series where you could 100% say that Iowa State's got the edge at tight end. I don't think there's any doubt this year. You could maybe make the argument in 21 with Charlie Kohler and Chase Allen, but back then Iowa had Sam Laporta, who is no slouch himself. So
yeah,
this is definitely a matchup that could swing the game in Iowa State's favor. What maybe makes it the most appealing for Taylor Mauser in the Iowa State offense?
I would say the fact that, you've seen Gabe Burkle, Ben Bramer, and again, I'll always say this, some people call him Benjamin all the time. I prefer Ben, and he always says either way is good for him. So I'm not insulting him or his family when I say Ben.
As a fellow Ben, I agree. Yes, Rob. Yeah. I will back you up.
I appreciate that. And a healthy Tyler Moore just makes such a huge difference. That guy came in so athletic. He's been banged up multiple times every season, been out so much. And when you throw in a young talent like Cooper Alexander, we saw Roskup on the field. We saw Trip Walsh make a couple big catches. This is the deepest group they've ever had. Is it at the top as talented? I mean, Charlie Kohler was a 3-time All-American, so I would say no, not necessarily. But the creativity, and I asked Mauser about this, just how creative he can be in his play calling when you have 13, 14 personnel on the field. And it doesn't mean it's not a power run, play coming. I mean, you split those guys out, throw 2 to the sideline, 1 over the middle. Oh, and by the way, you've got a couple receivers running routes and a running back out of the backfield. I mean, it creates a lot of mismatches. And I think Iowa's got 3 new starters at linebacker. They graduated some greats. I know Higgins bafflingly was an undrafted free agent that made his team. So it is definitely an advantage for Iowa State. Now, how creative will the Cyclones be? Because I think that's been one of the bugaboos in this Cyhawk matchup. The Cyclones sometimes in the past, and I don't think we saw it so much last season, but seemingly wanting to play between the tackles. And that's Iowa's kryptonite is having to defend every single inch of the field. And I think Taylor Mauser is going to make them have to try to do that on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think UAlbany had a 6-7 foot tight end like Benjamin Bramer, Ben Bramer, or Gabe Burkle, running out there. So this is going to be kind of a wake up, a water in the face for wow, this is a serious matchup problem. But Rob, I would almost argue, I hear what you're saying about Iowa having to replace so much at linebacker, but I think Iowa State's primary offense runs through the tight ends through the entire season. I don't think this is a thing that, hey, we're going to look at this specific matchup and force feed these tight ends. I think that's what Mauser's comfortable with, every game. He tells us almost every week, it feels like, that those are his most trusted guys. And of course they would be. He comes from a tight end background, and they're probably, with what Bramer's done and what Burkle did at the end of last year, the 2 most proven pass catchers so far on this roster. So I almost look at it like it's almost like a bonus that, hey, the tight ends could really be a problem for Iowa. And that's what Iowa State wants to do every week.
No doubt about that. I mean, these guys are going to they're going to break records for tight end catches, at least in recent years. I think the top, when Kohler was involved, Allen, I think Sainer had just graduated maybe, but those are two really good guys. Chase Allen, of course, cups of coffee in the NFL. 8 combined touchdowns. Charlie Kohler had 6 that season. And I mean, we were already at 2-1 with these guys. We're going to see other tight ends do it, just like we saw Steve-O get one last year. I think these guys can combine for quite a bit more than 8 touchdown catches.
Yeah, Tyler Moore, he scored one last year. He could have had one in the K-State game, I thought, down in the red zone. Rocco missed that read. There's no doubt that the tight ends, I think it's Iowa State's biggest strength, which is crazy considering how highly we talked of Rocco earlier in the show. It's probably a 1A, 1B type thing, and there's no doubt they work together. And Rob mentioned it, the creativity that you can have when you correctly use the tight ends, which I don't think Iowa State correctly used the tight ends in 2021 when Chuck Kohler and Chase Allen, and I believe it still was Dylan Sainer, maybe it was Jared Rust that year. Those guys were your biggest strength, but it shrunk the field. And you had Brock Purdy, a quarterback who started in a Super Bowl, and you weren't really spacing the field out at all. I think what you're seeing this year is you can trick the defense into, oh my gosh, they've got 13 personnel. Surely they're just going to run Carson Hansen to the tight ends. Oh no, play action, you're pop passing to Gabe Burkle to ice the game. And that's where I have so much more faith in Taylor Mauser than previous offensive coordinators in this offense. And a lot of that does help with his tight end background. He's a tight end expert.
Well, hey, some interesting insight we got about those tight ends from Mauser. And by the way, Cyclone fans, if you're not watching the Taylor Mauser press conferences, I can't help you. You can watch them on Fanatic. You can watch them. I post them on the Quad City Times. They will be the best 20 minutes of your week.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I asked him about that pop pass, kind of, pulling it back to the Ireland game when he saved that play in the back of his pocket for a critical conversion late. And, Cyclone fans know what I'm talking about, where you have a tight end block and then leak out of the backfield, kind of throw it over him and make a big conversion. I asked Mauser, what allows a tight end to succeed in that play? I thought he'd give me an answer of you have to be a physical beast to go out and block and then have the ability to release off that block and go make a contested jump ball catch. That's what I thought Mauser would say. He said, no, it's all mental. You just got to be a dog. You got to be somebody who has a grit about you, somebody who has a desire to go out and go make a game-winning play like that, which I think is kind of an example of what the Cyclones have that make Gabe Burkle and Ben Bramer so different.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think Iowa State just has the edge over Iowa, because that play right there, I'm not saying that the pop pass will dictate who wins the 2025 Cyhawk game, but creative plays in general. That play right there is all feel. It's all feel between Rocco Becht and Gabe Burkle. That's chemistry built up over 3 years in practice. It's chemistry built up being one of the best quarterbacks in the league, one of the best tight ends in the league. And it also takes trust between the offensive coordinator and those two to get it done. I don't know what Mark Gronowski will be over the course of the season, but it is blatantly obvious when I watched them in week 1 against UAlbany that they do not trust Gronowski yet. They don't trust him to that point. And when you don't trust your quarterback, I don't know what the level I don't trust him at, but when you compare the trust that Iowa State has in Rocco compared to what Iowa has in Gronowski, it limits the playbook immensely. And that is one of those intangibles that you can't really put on a Vegas number, that you can't really put in a prediction. It's all feel. And that's where Iowa State, I think, has a massive advantage all season long with Rocco.
I would say that tying in with that is they don't trust their wide receivers.
Yes.
Because Gronowski, wins 2 FCS titles. I mean, the guy's a gamer, tough, can run it. He certainly made some big throws during those runs. And also tight ends. I mean, I would, at tight end, you put a lot of really great tight ends in the league over the years, decades. Luke Lachey was a really good player. I think he's stuck with the team. So it's tough for Rob, especially when they could lean on that run game and rush for over 300 yards against the Great Danes. Even with Kamari Moulton going down, I think they're deep there. As you alluded to, their O-line's really good. So it's going to be one of those games where Iowa State try to, and I also went back and looked at, I think we looked at the tight end usage with Kohler in 21, and the one thing that popped in my mind was Breece Hall, right? How do you not feature that guy? And he rushed for nearly 1,500 yards, 20 touchdowns. And I think that was part of the bugaboo. Iowa State thought it could do that ground and pound thing and then use those tight ends as X factors. And I think they did reasonably successfully, except they lost so many close games that season, which started a string of that for a while, which has now been fully reversed. But, Iowa State is not going to feel like they're in a position to do that with Iowa. And I think we've seen that early in these first couple of games. They don't care if they score fast. They feel deep enough on defense, pass rush or not, that, okay, we score in 4 plays in the minute 45. Okay, they might come up with a 7-minute drive after that, but we'll adjust. And you know what? We'll score again. And if it's quick, so be it. And if they have a decent drive, we'll adjust from that. I think that's what makes this. I know Chris Hassel, of course, friend of the network, I guess, with Iowa Everywhere and the show with Williams, said, I didn't on social media that, Iowa State fans have ever felt this confident. It usually doesn't go well or something. I'm paraphrasing. And it's like, I don't know how confident Iowa State fans ever feel. But if there's any one of these meetings in the last several years, again, where Iowa State's outgained Iowa most of the last, 7, if not all, almost all, it's this one, I feel like, just because of matchups. Again, the other X factor is Iowa's D-line. I mean, 3 experienced guys who all can get to the quarterback. So a lot of intriguing matchups, but Iowa State has enough mismatches that I don't think Iowa State fans should feel bad about feeling confident about this 2025 Cyhawk.
Yeah, I think that leads pretty well into our final topic, and it's the drought. Iowa State hasn't beat Iowa at Jack Trice Stadium dating back to 2011. There hasn't been a home team that's won this game since 2018. That's hard to explain, but when you factor in there was no game in 2020, so the game wasn't played at Kinnick Stadium from 2018 to 2022, which is bizarre to even think about. But what is the biggest explanation for first, why hasn't the home team been able to win in 7 years?
It's that away field advantage. They talk about it all the time. No, I don't know if there is a good explanation. Matt Campbell didn't really have one. He brought it up. He kind of said, well, I mean, that's facts. Like, yeah, I mean, it's the truth. There must be something there. And Campbell's thought, and maybe there's some truth to this, is the home team lives in the Cyhawk atmosphere for a week. Guys, and this is my first hate week. I guess that's what they call it on the beat. So I've certainly enjoyed kind of living in the Cyhawk atmosphere. You see the, bed sheets and stuff on the frat houses, and you realize just how big of a deal this matchup is. So maybe it is a little bit of an advantage to butts out there on Friday, spend a night in a hotel Saturday, and just go play rather than kind of live in this atmosphere. Go to class and have to hear from all your classmates about Cyhawk and, all the visual reminders of this matchup. Maybe it is a little bit easier to be the away team. I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it also ties into, as somebody who's been around this rivalry for a long time and has seen long droughts, I would say break that drought and go on a streak. And then another kind of long drought, last team that Campbell plays every year, except for 2020, that he beat, including all the Big 12 rivals. So I think one of the biggest things is how close these games have been and how weird they've been. Since Campbell took over, other than the 42-3 blasting they absorbed in Iowa City, which caused Campbell to really, I'll say, have a very spirited discussion with this team. a team that got better as the season wore on, certainly, and set the stage for 2017 and what was to come. But, you got the triple overtime in 2017 that you've got a 13-3 game where Iowa State outgained them but lost. 18-17, right? A game day game where you had the miscue on the punt return.
And you get two different weather delays as well.
Yeah, and then you get, a 3-point game, a 7-point game, and then, oh, by the way, a Kyle Conradi walk-on comes in out of Dubuque and drills a 54-yarder that essentially wins it in the closing seconds in Kinnick last season. So, A, the weirdness of the games, and B, just how evenly matched the teams have been. I think that can tie into it as well, although it doesn't dictate why in the world the road team would win the last, handful. But I think those are certainly factors in that being kind of an equalizer to the home team.
I think one slight explanation that I would have is that I truly do think the last 2 or 3 years that Iowa State has been a better team, top to bottom, than Iowa, especially when you factor in what they've rolled out at quarterback between Cade McNamara, Deacon Hill, Spencer Peach. I just think I don't think their wins have really reflected their success, especially when they were in the Big Ten West. So I think the right team has won this game in 22 and 24. In 23, if that game was played in November, it probably goes the other way if it wasn't Rocco Becht's first start against a real opponent. And when you look at the earlier eras, like the 2018 through the 2021, I think there's no doubt that Iowa handled pressure, handled close games far better than Iowa State. And that's why I think you've just seen it go the other way. Whenever the road team has there is an explanation on why the road team has won each and every year, but the pattern of it just doesn't make sense at all.
No, that's a great point because as you were saying that, Jake, I was thinking about how the insanely long streak Iowa had without a turnover in the Cyhawk series. It was mind-blowing. And yet Iowa State would be fumbling even with Breece Hall inside the 10-yard line, or throwing pick sixes, or getting punts blocked twice. So Iowa would beat Iowa State the way Iowa would beat everyone, with defense and special teams, and enough offensively, a play or two to hold on despite getting outgained by 100 yards or something like that. And I think you're right. Iowa State has been top to bottom, a more talented team. But then again, Iowa's had the Cooper DeJeans of the world, the Higgins, lots of other guys who have popped in, and we've seen them pop off, and Sam Laporta into the NFL. So always an intriguing matchup. I think the drought for the home team is an intriguing question, but we've all raised interesting hypotheses for why, and I think they're all valid to some extent. And I guess we'll find out if the Cycles can break that trend in at 11 a.m. Bright and early Saturday morning.
Yeah, the drought dating back to 2011, I think is fairly explainable for the most part. And it starts with 2013 and 2015. Those teams sucked. That's pretty much about it. 2017, a classic game that went to overtime. Akram Wadley made a play. That was what that game came down to. 2019, 2021, weird games, college game day, weather delay in one of them. A 2021 Iowa State team that pretty much collapsed under any pressure that year, collapsed under pressure. And 23, it was a weird year with the gambling. That team changed after the Ohio game. So you didn't really, I feel like, see the 2023 team really play Iowa. And that's all the losses right there. So is this the normal year? Is this the year where you look back and you're like, well, we thought Iowa State was better 1 through 85. They were, and they just won the game. We'll see.
Well, listen, you know who doesn't care about any of that? The 18 to 22-year-olds on Iowa State's roster.
Exactly.
They don't care. They don't probably know a lot of this history. What they know is what Rocco Becht's done for them the last 2 years. They believe they have the psychological advantage when Rocco Becht gets the ball late. So they don't care about any of that history.
That's funny. I'm just going to say real quick, Jake. I asked Caleb Bacon as a guy who grew up in Lake Mills in Iowa, and, what he remembered watching the Rivalry, he said, I didn't really watch college football. I just watched my Vikings. So Skol, Caleb Bacon, and Skol, Jake, and all those who suffer. But I thought that was interesting. That kind of ties in completely with what Ben was saying, in a different way. But he's right. I mean, as Campbell will say, these guys, history, we can talk about history. It's interesting. It's unique. It's fun to talk about. These guys don't give a flip about that. I mean, what happened, they don't even remember what happened last week most half the time, and that's a good thing. So, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jake.
No, in the very, very similar vein, I asked Gabe Burkle what he remembered about the 2011 game, the last time Iowa State won at home, and he's like, honestly, not much. I was 8. So, and I didn't want to ask. I asked Rocco a couple weeks ago, like, hey, what'd you know about Farmageddon before he moved to Iowa? And he's like, if I'm being honest, nothing. So I didn't ask him yesterday because I knew what the answer was going to be, and that those points kind of all tie together. That, yes, there's some demons in this game. There's certainly demons in this game at Jack Trice Stadium. But what's most fresh in the heads of these players? It's Kyle Kinrarty hitting a 54-yarder. It's Rocco getting the ball with, 34 seconds left and somehow getting the team into field goal range. Ben's completely right. They don't care about Akram Wadley's 55-yard miraculous run at the end of the 2017 game in regulation. They don't. Or
Detron Young's.
They don't care about Detron Young smoking the punt returner.
DeShante,
in 2019. They don't care about Josie Jewell stripping Breece Hall at his own 2-yard line.
Yeah.
I think that was Jack Campbell. Sorry.
Yep.
The point is, we'll just have to see on Saturday. We'll see if there will be a pressure in the stadium. I don't know what that pressure will feel like for the players. I know what it'll feel like for me. I probably won't sleep the night before, but I'm guessing the players are going to be ready, and more importantly, Rocco is going to be ready.
Yeah, and Campbell and his staff will use this too. Just like last season, they used the first time stuff. First time in our 134-year history, all that stuff. That was a stress and they were not shy about it. Sometimes, in part because those guys don't know anything about that. And how cool can you motivate? Is it to motivate people by using a history they know nothing about and being like, hey, you can do something none of these teams have done in the last 14 years. Mm-hmm. We are confident you can do it. Go do it. Show the fans. Let them celebrate. And we're taking another step. And we're not shrinking back from where we were last season on the cusp of making the college football playoff.
I mean, to get into bigger picture stuff, if you look at what has Campbell not accomplished, win a Big 12 championship, beat Iowa at home, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, like before the league expanded, before Oklahoma and Texas left, Iowa State had beaten every Big 12 opponent home and away. Now you look at that they've still got some boxes to check off. They still got to beat Arizona and Arizona State, but that might be it as far as just beating opponents. Like, there is not much left for Campbell to accomplish, but he has not given Iowa State fans a reason to cheer about the Cyhawk game while at Jack Trice Stadium.
Yeah, good point.
Which is just crazy to think that it hasn't happened yet, but we will see if it does. And we will react to it potentially next week on the Beat Reporters. We'll react no matter what happens. We'll see if it's a win. Do you guys have any parting thoughts before we wrap up episode 2?
Ben?
I'm good, guys. I'm ready to go. Bring on Cyhawk week. I can't wait. It's gonna be fun. What should I know? First Cyhawk.
So I've got a bit of a fun story. I was never allowed to go to the Cyhawk game as a kid, even though my family had season tickets. We have a tailgating bus with about 7 other families, and I was never allowed to go to the Cyhawk game. And I always thought that it was because of all the F-bombs and all the middle fingers in the stadium, which you will hear and you will see on Saturday. But that was not the reason, actually. The real reason was, so we've got this tailgating bus. There's like 7, 8 families that go in on it. And it's a party every week, but it's kid-friendly enough. But the problem with the Cyhawk game is you've got people in these families that they're inviting their friend, and then that friend's bringing a cousin, and that cousin's bringing their friends, and all of a sudden, that guy's getting arrested in front of the tailgating bus for a public intox, and nobody there knows who it is. Or someone's got a kid in college, and they're bringing that friend from college is bringing all their friends, and then they're bringing their and it's like the house parties you see in a movie where you can't account for everybody, and it just wasn't a good atmosphere for a kid to be in. I didn't really know that until I was in high school or college to be old enough, and like, yeah, that's why you couldn't go. So stay safe in the tailgate lots. Maybe limit the massive parties, because you want everyone staying safe. It's good that it's an 11 a.m. kick. A little less time to pregame.
Ben, I would just say, as a guy who grew up with Bedlam, I'm sure what struck you the most about that was the atmosphere, just how electric it was. And that's what Rocco said, as a guy who, of course, growing up in Florida, knew nothing about the Iowa State Cyhawk rivalry. But that's what he said on Tuesday, the atmosphere, repeatedly. He just said it's something special, and he's not trying to downplay that part of it, even while you try to downplay the magnitude of the game or getting too high or too low in front of it. So enjoy it. Get out and walk the tailgate lots a little bit before and see how people are interacting, and see how many people are unruly and causing problems. And it's all part of the deal.
I'll go check in with our friend Urban. I'll go see how Urban's doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Big Noon. We forgot to... Big Noon and whatever the Barstool kickoff show is. There's going to be a lot of extracurriculars. I don't think it'll be nearly the spectacle College Game Day is. I don't think it'll be as distracting for everybody as it was in 2019 and 2021. But we'll see who they do. I've never really watched Big Noon. Do they bring in a guest picker?
That's a good question.
I don't know. Everybody was watching Game Day last week. We don't watch Big Noon when it's Lee Corso's send-off. Come on.
well, I guess we will.
We'll see.
We'll find out. And thank you to everyone who has tuned in to another episode of The Beat Reporters, brought to you by Kelderman Manufacturing. We will be back next Thursday, same time, and you can follow along here in the Northwest Bank Studios wherever you listen to your podcasts.